About 8 o'clock.
Place to sit down.
Right in the middle.
No seats here. That's what they just look.
Yeah, we got some minutes.
Call this meeting to order. The regular monthly meeting of the Town of Champlain Local Development Corporation. I'd like to welcome all you people, all the smiling faces. First, we have the minutes of our last regular meeting on October 27th. Any errors or corrections?
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second. Moved and seconded that we accept the minutes of the October 27th meeting as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
We also have the minutes of the special meeting on November 18th. Any errors or corrections on that? Motion to accept. Move that we accept the minutes. Moved and seconded that we accept the minutes of the November 18th meeting. All in favor? Aye. Nays?
I see no mentioning of the open meeting part of the meeting. Except the beginning.
Well, the meeting that was called to order by Mr. Collins was the open meeting. It's assumed that the meeting was open. Then you went into executive session, and the fourth paragraph indicates that you went out of executive session.
Well, most certainly leaves out much that was put in the Plattsburgh Press about the open part of the meeting. I believe that tape was received under the Freedom of Information Act. There's no mention of that at all.
You mean there were motions made in the open session?
No, but that's
no discussion.
no discussion.
Well, it says here there was discussion regarding the last meeting of the Champlain Town Board. There was also discussion regarding the executive director's opposition to a new prison in the town of Champlain. Was there discussion on subjects other than that in the open session of the meeting? Have I missed discussion?
I see the executive director makes a statement. What was the question? In the executive session on paragraph 4.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. What's your question?
says the executive session was closed in open session. In open session, the executive director indicated to the Board of Trustees that he would not resign his position.
That's when I indicated that to you.
What was the question, though? Were you asked to resign?
Yes. In executive session.
In executive session, you were asked to resign.
That is not true.
I don't think so.
Well, I don't remember anybody offering a motion, that's for sure.
You weren't asked to resign.
I wasn't asked to resign.
All right.
The only thing I'd say is the minutes are not complete.
I can accept it.
You can accept it?
No, I can't accept this.
Do you wish to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we can accept the minutes of the special meeting of November 18th.
Excuse me, Mr. Finney moved that the minutes be approved.
I'll withdraw
Lane
my
seconded. Thank you.
You have a second to Mr. O'Neill's motion.
What was his motion?
I can accept this minutes.
Minutes.
The executive director said he was asked to resign. But as I said in the statement, that was not true.
Well,
I mean,
are you not accepting these because they don't hold some of the content of the meeting?
Excuse me, the minutes do not reflect that the executive director was asked to resign. They merely reflect that the executive director indicated to the Board of Trustees that he would not resign.
That's very true, but I think that it makes a suggestion.
did we ask you to resign? We didn't ask you to resign.
All right, gentlemen.
I think it should be revised.
Well, suggested revision, I'll be more than glad to put it in.
There's a question on these minutes as they stand. I entertain a motion that they be revised.
I'll make that.
Moving and second the minutes of the meeting of November 18th be revised. All in favor?
Aye.
Now, you have a copy of the bills. Any questions on those?
Will they be paid?
Move that the bills be paid. There a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the bills as presented be paid. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
At this point, I'd like to open the meeting to the public with a couple of ground rules, if you will. We have a large crowd here, and so that we can hear as many people as possible, I'd like to try limiting each and every speaker to one question at a time. In other words, whoever asks the first question, when they have their answer, then we can go on to the next individual that has a question. So it doesn't say we can't come back to that first individual again if they have more questions. Does that sound satisfactory? I'm sure there are a lot of questions, and one of the reasons for this meeting tonight, having so many people here, because we know that there are many questions about the operation of the LDC. And we hope that with this meeting we can at least straighten out some of these questions, some of the misinformation, and enlighten you on what the LDC is, what it does, and how it does it. Who would like to start?
First of all, Mr. President, I was wondering if they could tip that light up a little bit, it's right in my eyes. Let's see.
Good job, Warren.
There you go. Very good. Thank you.
Who'd like to be first? Bob?
Bob Rassi, Dick, I'd like to ask you, is your executive director, Mr. Berry, is he under a written or an oral contract of some kind with the LDC?
Oral.
It's under oral contract. What does that contract specify?
Well, it says Mr. Beal.
I would do that. Well-
Speaking acquaintance, right?
There isn't a handwritten contract. What it is, it's an appointment that's made by the board. That would enter under your bylaw. And that's under the Article 13, page 5. And so states that the LDC Board of Trustees shall retain the services of the director, who shall be a non-voting member of the Board of Trustees. Section 2 states the director is appointed by the Board of Trustees by a majority vote of those present. The director shall hold office for a term of 1 year. The director may succeed himself if so appointed by the Board of Trustees. Section 3. The director may receive a stipend as remuneration for services the Board of Trustees so elects. And that is how the LDC director is appointed to the board.
What are his duties, Art? That's the question. When he's under an oral contract, he has a specific job title and duties he has to cover, right? Because an oral contract is a legal contract, the same as a written contract in New York.
I got that.
Section you read it?
Yeah. The duties of the director shall be as prescribed by the Board of Trustees and shall include, is not necessarily limited to, the following: to conduct the day-to-day business of the LDC as authorized by the board, to represent the LDC in matters related to the LDC's general purpose and as authorized by the board. Any other duties as prescribed and authorized by the Board of Trustees.
Okay, so in other words, he's representing the LDC in order to get business into this area, correct? Now, if that is his job, and he is opposing a correctional institute, which is an industry or a business, then all I can see is that actually he has breached that contract. It's a legal contract in the state of New York. When he doesn't carry out his duties, he's breached his contract.
Can I respond to that?
Mr. Berry would like to respond.
Mr. Rasco, I have never opposed a prison in my official capacity as executive director of the LDC.
Keep it down.
Each time that I have made any statements, public or private, in opposition to the prison, I've gone out of my way to point out that I am speaking simply as a private citizen, as a taxpayer and a resident of the town of Champlain. On several occasions, I've even gone so far as to point out that the LDC has taken a different position in support of the prison. So I have never opposed the prison and used my official position with this LDC to do so, and therefore, in my opinion, have not violated the so-called contract that I have with the LDC.
But didn't the LDC tell you to act in the best of their interest?
No,
You're there?
specifically when this issue came up, I informed the LDC that I was not able, for personal and moral reasons, to support a prison, and suggested that the LDC Board of Trustees use Mr. Collins as a spokesman, and the LDC Board of Trustees agreed to that.
How can you exempt yourself from not being a spokesman or doing your duties when you're being paid with taxpayers'
Well, I
money?
simply asked and they gave me permission to do so. I think you have to take that up with the Board of Trustees. They knew of my
They
opposition.
gave you permission to...
They knew of my opposition and they agreed that Mr. Collins would be the spokesman for the LDC in favor of the prison, not I.
And they gave you permission to go out and write letters like you did here, opposing the...
They never gave me permission to write a letter. You're twisting it around, Bob. I'm telling you that we discussed who would be the spokesman for the prison. It would be Mr. Collins and not I, and that was done.
Now, when you're working with somebody, don't you think that you would work for them in the fullest and not oppose them, not, I wouldn't say behind their back, but in another manner? I don't think that's correct. That's not morally or ethically correct either.
Well,
I think we're getting a little far afield here, gentlemen. I'd like to come back to you later and I think we pretty well answered the question we had. Next.
I have a question. Up until the time that...
Could I have your name?
Oh, Maureen Hollern. Up until the time that the prison issue surfaced, would you say that each and every member of the board was satisfied with Mr. Berry's job performance up until then?
I would say generally speaking, yes.
Do you feel he carried out his duties as a...
Call the board, please.
I think that you have to look at it in a general census. Mr. Berry and myself have had a few words, but that's what we're here on the board for. We're here, everybody has their own opinion, and we're able to speak. As far as percentage-wise, I would say probably 80% of the time we're well satisfied, in my own opinion. Some of the others may have a different percentage.
I think Ms. Holland's question is, were you satisfied with my job performance?
Generally, overall, 80%, I would say yes. There's always little things that, you know, not everybody agrees with, and that's why we're here, is to talk about and work on it.
As an expectation of Mr. Berry, would you expect that he would agree on all issues to which you people would address yourselves as a condition of his further employment or present employment?
That's sort of a broad statement. Question, isn't it?
Well, do you
Are you
expect...
trying to expect me to predict the future?
No, I don't expect you to predict the future. I expect you to address yourself to the question at hand, and that is, because Mr. Berry has disagreed on this issue and he has come under fire, will, if he disagrees further, will he be relieved of his duties?
I can't answer that question, please.
Anybody else on the board want to speak up as to how they feel about Mike's performance of the duty, with this one exception?
Any board is going to have any disagreements. The item is that Mark has served the board to the, I think, the best of his knowledge, best of his capability. I support Mark strongly. This is a real sensitive issue, the prison issue. I think after a little bit of time, I think it's something, some other terms or whatever may be able to balance it out. I'm not sure. Past performance, yes.
I'd like to also address it. This is the second meeting I've sat on this board since being reappointed. First one being last week, so it was even better than this one. But I was on the board originally when it was first started a few years ago. I served on the IDA board. As far as I was concerned, Mark Berry was the catalyst that started not only those boards, but the entire concept of an LDC coming into this area, not just into these two villages, into this township. And he worked very hard to make it a worthwhile project. And I think that the fruits of his labor exist in some buildings that have also caused controversy. But he's created some jobs. They may be $5 an hour jobs, and they may be $6 an hour jobs, but those people are employed. And obviously they're happily employed because they're still working. They're started working 2 weeks ago, or 2 months ago, or 2 years ago, and they're still there. And if they weren't happy, they could go somewhere else in the future. But they're off the welfare rolls, and they're gainfully employed. Now, what I think Mark has created, and the LDC, of course, as a board can be commended for going along with it, but the catalyst behind it being Mark has been tremendous. And I don't think there was a person in the area that could really come up with big grounds to say that Mark wasn't doing his job until this entire prison issue came up. And now to say that he's not doing his job is a mouthful, because he's trying to divorce himself and say, I'm talking as Mark Berry. And we're saying we're employers. And we feel that if we come up with an issue that is fully supported, then Mark, you don't have to stand up and wave the flag for it. But don't jump up and down against it. He has a right to his opinion. He has every right in the world to say what he wants to say. He will never, and not a person here can ever undo what he's done for us in the past 2 years. But as to what's happened on this present issue, we all have an opinion. And you can say, well, he's derelict in his duties, get rid of the guy. I don't know if it's all worth the price. We'll decide that. I'm sure we'll decide. But it may be a very heavy price to pay. Nobody's irreplaceable.
I'd like to echo Mr. Spiegel's comment and also add, prior to coming to the Rouse's Point area, I had occasion to work with the industrial development man for the state of Maine and also for the state of New Jersey. And then after I came here, I had a chance to work with Mr. Lappa on projects. And I will have to say that, in my opinion, Mr. Berry has done one hell of a job for this area. And I know nobody is irreplaceable, but it's going to be very, very difficult to find someone to take his place. Yes.
Sir, my name is Dick Emery. Now, say you owned a company. You had a man working for you like him, and he's got a right to say his speech, and he started knocking you business. You tell me you're not going to fire him? The man, if he's working for us, I hate to see the guy against us. Now, the LDC, we're all for it, believe me, the group I'm with. But when a man is backing us with a mouth like this man here, he's not in our favor. And I say he should be removed. If he's got a lump in his throat, all he had to do is chew it and swallow it. Not go ahead and mouth off every day in a paper like he was.
I think it should
100% right.
Excuse me, I think it should be pointed out that...
Well, you ain't pointing nothing out to me, Mark, because you're putting it your way and I'm putting it like it was. You talked against the prison, and if you're LDC working for me, you're doing a piss-poor job. Sorry.
First of all, I would ask that language...
I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry. That's why I apologize. You don't need someone like him.
I would simply like to point out that even the Paris graphic workers, for whom presumably this prison is being achieved, have the right, the legal right, not only to disagree with their employer, but if necessary, to go on strike and argue with their employer, as Harris Graphics workers have done, both publicly and privately, over issues of mutual concern. This is an issue of concern with me, the economic development of Northern Tier. And while I have made it very clear that I spoke only as a person, I am simply asking you to give me the same rights that workers all across this nation have, and that is the right to speak their mind.
Mark, I read your little piece in the paper about freedom of speech and constitutional rights. But in a position like you were, you're going to sit there and tell me that you shouldn't have shut your mouth? If you're working there for me, if I owned a business, I'd have fired you on the spot.
I'm sure
if you're working for me. No matter what your opinion is, you're still going to do it my way if I own the company. That's what I'm trying to put across to this board. And if they don't get rid of you, something's wrong. You don't deserve the job. And I'm not knocking anything you did. The same way in the statement about, we want minimum wage jobs in here. Who are you going to dictate to somebody what they want for wages? If I want to pay a man $10, if I own a company, I'll pay him $10. I don't need you to tell me what to pay him. And you won't work for the minimum wage? And the same way with Harris. They started at 50 cents an hour. You're talking 40 years ago. And your big trees and your little trees that you've been on the TV with and everything, it's all bull as far as I'm concerned. If this board don't do something about it, we'll have to talk to them.
Thank you, Dick. Good night.
How many years?
Yes.
Yeah, my name's Chris Cooper. I'd like to relate to the group something that happened a couple of years ago that I think is pertinent. I'm with Anakim, and some of you may know we had a plant until, well, we still have it actually in Champlain. But we were very close to moving to Vermont. We're not a big company. We have about 25 employees, so we'll maybe double that within the next couple of years. But a couple of years ago, when we were looking for an expansion facility, we talked to Mr. Lavin. We were over in Vermont talking very seriously with folks there. And Mark learned that we were leaving the area, and he got a hold of us. And believe me, it was Mark, the very persuasive job that he did, which is why we're in Rouse's Point today in Portland Montgomery Estates. Otherwise, we would have moved to Vermont. We're not paying minimum wage jobs. I think some of the other companies that are going to be moving in there, which are moving in there because of Mark, and believe me, I know some of these other businessmen, and moving there for that reason. I think it's important to keep that in perspective. Personally, I think Mark has done one hell of a job.
Thanks, Chris. Yes.
I would like to take Margaret Madish. I would like to ask each member of the board, if I might, when this issue arose and you saw that there was going to be a problem, I'm sure each and every one of you were interested. I would like to know, did any of you be brother enough to this man to call him and ask him to take a low profile? Let's back off a little bit. I would like to have a call track. Each one of you.
I didn't certainly call him.
I did. I guess the board,
No, I'm asking individual. Did
not
you?
individual in them.
I very definitely did. I spent quite a bit
I
of
just want to know
time.
yes or no.
Yes.
Tom? Let's not defer, yes or no.
I said yes.
Tom?
No at the beginning, yes and no.
Sir?
No.
Mr.
Yes.
Collins? Down this side.
No.
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 Yes.
Okay, those of you that were gentlemen enough to say yes, and I know you're honest, were you amazed to hear him on television? After the call or before the call? On a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday evening? It was a rebroadcast.
I think Mrs. Madish, if we're going to talk,
I am talking to members.
I think Mrs. Madish,
I would
with the
like to
exception of
speak to
Mr.
the
Collins, all of these people will tell you, they probably don't
I would
remember
like
right now,
to have the
spoke to me
gentleman
after the
answer
program,
yes.
not before.
Tell me, was it before or after?
Well,
And if it was before or
Ask him
after,
that
were they amazed? That's all I'm asking, and I'm not including you.
Shut up.
Back to you.
I was amazed.
Those, Sonny, you said yes? Was it
I'd
before
like to,
or after?
could I just say one sentence?
Was it before or after?
I was away, so it was after.
Okay.
Sorry, I talked too much.
Tom,
Like Mark, after it was taped.
after it was taped,
Correct.
okay?
Before.
Were you surprised
I was
that the
surprised.
profile did not stay low?
I was surprised at the last broadcast, yes.
Okay. Over on this side. Gentleman on
I
the
guess I'm
end.
the only one. I don't really remember whether it was before or after. It was very close to that period. I did not see the original broadcast.
Okay, and those of you that said no, do you feel a little guilty that maybe you didn't call them and say, hey, you're working for us, let's keep this a little bit calmer?
I believe we
Call a special session meetings.
You
No.
did. And then
The
took
president
care of
did.
that situation, I hope.
we did.
You did? I read the paper Saturday. Thank you.
I believe the impression that we were left with at the last monthly regular meeting was that the profile would be low. not that it would be that far in front. That was the impression that we were left.
Who's got the next question?
Mark, could I ask you, please, did you discuss with the LDC your objections to the correctional facility? Did you bring it before you formed the Citizens Against Prisons? Did you come at an LDC meeting, did you say, hey, I think this is a bad idea? Obviously, it's a development question, and obviously must have been under discussion. Did you try to convince them that this was not a good idea?
The one and only meeting that we discussed this, other than the last executive session, I think Mr. Beal brought it up and suggested that the board come out in favor of the prison. There was some discussion. At that point, I informed the board that I was against the prison for personal and moral reasons. I think it was Mr. Beal or someone, I can't remember, asked me why. I explained the reasons. I think there were three in general and quite a few in particular. And I suggested for that reason that I wasn't able to serve as the spokesman. I suggested that Mr. Collins serve as the spokesman. It was agreed, and the discussion finished, the vote was taken, and that was all that was said. It didn't get any more detail than that, and I have to differ a little bit with Mr. Laura, and nobody even discussed profile high or low during that meeting.
But don't you feel that as director, and since the board is obviously going to vote on whether or not this should be good for the town, that with your experience, instead of on a personal level, you might have said, look guys, this is going to affect our whole town, we ought to be against it?
Well, I think that the LDC can support a prison without using their executive director as the sponsor.
No, I think you misunderstood.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You felt very strongly about it. If someone wanted to bring a plant in here to build atomic bombs, and it were a very dangerous thing, you felt, wouldn't your first move be to try to get the LDC to be non-supportive, rather than just say, I'm against it personally, and then go out and form your own group? Here you had the means at your disposal to get a legitimate group behind it. What?
I think you're making a good point, Shane, but even at that meeting, although it had never been discussed before, it was my impression that the minds had been made up. And I don't think, and you can poll the board, I don't think that regardless of what I had said that night, I would have changed any minds. But that's probably why I didn't make enough of an attempt.
I'd like to clear something with the record. The meeting was October 27th, when presented a resolution to the board about the LDC supporting and assisting the town of Champlain for a prison. Mr. Barry did not inform this board that he was having a meeting the next night, which I have a letter right here, that he was going to organize the meeting for against the prison. He did not inform us on that. So how can we comment on something like that when he didn't know he was going to organize it? That's for the record. And this meeting was October 28th, and our meeting was the 27th.
Mr. O'Neill, if I may comment on that, I host all sorts of gatherings in my office building. Everything from Right to Life to conservatives to, in this particular case, people who at that time were either against the prison or in favor of the referendum. And I have never been asked by the board to inform them of who I had meeting at my office or when or why. And I think that for you to suggest that at that point I was organizing anything is to go a little bit overboard, because simply I was asked by these people to meet with them and I offered my facility. At that point, the Committee Against the Prison had not met. This is simply a group of individual citizens exercising their rights to meet to discuss an issue. And Mr. O'Neill, it may come as a shock to you, but we do not have to check with you or anybody in this town before we have a meeting about something. Nor do I.
It's kind of very obvious.
Ms. Halloran, Mr. Cottonell had his hand up first. We'll get back.
Thank you. Members of the board. Dick Cottonell, Champlain, New York. I
I really appreciate this opportunity for everybody for a forum in the LDC. I think it's long overdue, primarily because a lot of people didn't know what the LDC stood for. I know I didn't just 6-8 weeks ago. I take exception, however, with the board's meeting, the last meeting in Ross's Point, when it was published in the newspaper that one of the board members said that they had corrected me on some ill statements, quote, quote, ill statements. And Mr. Dick Collins said that what I had brought up at the board was untrue, rumored, and inaccuracies. That's what the paper carried. So since I haven't talked to any member of the LDC board, I have to go on what the paper printed was true and those statements were made. If any of the members that made those statements would like to bring up anything that I had made as a comment during that last meeting, I would be more than happy to reply in support.
I would.
Wait a minute, sir. Okay, first of all, I'm talking to the members of the board. I don't think that includes you.
He's a non-voting member of the board.
I was told that he was an employee who told the board.
He's a consultant, non-voting
Now, I would like to make the comment that this board could very well have one of its staunchest supporters and proponents for more money. Because I think that the overall objectives of the board are good. I, for one, I'm behind any organization that wants to enhance the economic strength of our community and our tax base and everything else. But I think everybody's getting away from the main issue. And some people are just trying to cloud it. Everybody wants to give Mark Berry credit for a lot of things. It's my understanding that there was already an agreement between the LDC and the town of Champlain before Mr. Berry stepped in. That's number one. Number two is in order to look at all of these businesses coming into the area, you got to look at why are they coming? Was it Mr. Berry's personality? The reason why they're coming across the border is because they're escaping high taxes. They're escaping high wages. And they're coming in over here because we're giving them tax-free the ability to stay here and work, and even giving them the money to do it with. There's nothing against incentives, mind you. I am not against incentives. I'll tell you what I'm against. I'm against an organization coming over here from Canada and spending a few years folding their doors and getting out after their tax exempt status is over. I'm against all of the buildings that were built in Fort Montgomery Estate with Canadian labor. Mr. Gay contracting. And all of the items that were bought from all of the buildings that was bought from sheetrocking and everything else bought in Canada. Most of it. Damn right it was. Some of the people in the community that own hardware stores can tell you that if they got a total of $100 business through the thing, it was a lot of money. It was a lot of money. That's some of the things that I'm against. Mr. Berry might be happy with $3.50 jobs, but you can't buy a house with it and you can't support a family with it. I sat in on a village board meeting in Champlain, the last one that they had, and there was a note there from Mr. Berry on the mayor's desk. And that note said in jest, or in very short terms, it just said, a new company is pouring their foundation or building their foundation behind Harris Graphics Corporation in December. Make sure the pipes are in by the end of November. And I said to the mayor, I said, hey, what kind of a business is it? I don't know. How many people is it going to employ? I don't know. What kind of a demand on the village for water and electricity? I don't know. Does any member of the board know? And there's two of you sitting right in here know that's the truth. They don't know. But Mr. Berry said it will be done, just like God said there will be light. I don't think it's funny, because the board members don't know what's going on in the villages. And just like two of the board members that are sitting in right here today in the last meeting, when I brought up Mr. Berry's approaching Mr. Susi at Harris Graphics, said that that's a lie. They said, last meeting, gentlemen, last meeting, two LDC board members said to me, no, that didn't happen. That's rumor. I'm here to tell you it happened. And that's fact. Mr. Berry went and offered Mr. Susi a deal. And for those of you in here that don't know what I'm talking about, is in the newspaper when they said that the assessment of Harris Graphics was $8 million and the building was sold for $2 million, and Mr. Gilpin was asked to go up there and sit down and talk taxes with him. And in the same hour, Mr. Berry was there to offer him a deal. And Mr. Susi was smart enough to say no, that he didn't want to deal with the man. I haven't asked my question yet. But I would like to ask one question to the president of the board. Yesterday, on the sidewalk at Ross's Point, I asked you a question. I'll ask you the same question. I asked you, Mr. Collins, what is the agreement between the LDC and the executive director as to the payment of secretarial services? Now I ask you again, the same question.
I told you at that time, we pay Mr. Berry, his secretary, when she works on LDC matters.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how much we pay, or how much he pays her, and I'm not about to discuss something like that in an open meeting.
Oh, well, Mr. President.
Well, for one thing, I'll tell you, she doesn't want it discussed.
Wait a minute, sir. We don't have to talk about nickels and dimes.
Oh, we're not going to talk about dollars either.
Okay, but didn't you say to me that Mr. Berry charges for his secretarial services more than what's paid? Didn't you, sir, make that comment to me?
I certainly did, and I would expect that he would do that. I certainly would if I was in business.
Why?
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 Could I explain you that?
Because I would...
I didn't think you want the truth. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to ask, I think it's time that Mr. Collins knew what was going on. I want to know if he knows what's going on.
You heard of benefits, haven't you? You heard of benefits.
I heard of
insurance
yes.
and that type of thing?
Yes, but wait a minute. Is it not true that we pay for copies? We pay for copies. We pay $15,000, or the LDC pays $15,000 for his salary. Okay? Now, if it is true that the position pays $4 and something cents an hour, okay, and is charged at a rate of, say, $10 an hour, and the girl works 20 hours at, say, at a rate of $4 an hour, all right? So, that's...
fiction, Mr. Padlock?
Wait a minute, sir.
Just check.
Wait a minute, okay? We'll say that's $160, or, well, for 10 hours, say it would be $1,000 $40. And at his rate of $10 an hour, it'd be $100. Where'd the other $60 go?
Dick, why don't we talk about this on the sidewalk at Rouse's Point?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Listen, I'm asking. I want to talk about it.
Let's have a little audit here.
I give you a question, Mr. President. Are you going to answer it?
No, I'm not.
May I?
And I told you the reasons why.
No, sir.
I'm not going to discuss salaries in an open meeting.
But if the man is a consultant, why are we paying for secretarial services above and beyond the actual amount spent for secretarial services?
Well,
why is there $40, $50? He's already salaried by us. You gave him a $6,000 bonus in 1986.
Right, let him answer the question.
He's making this up as he goes along. Can't I answer this?
I just said let you answer it.
Okay, first of all, Mr. Patno, as far as the secretarial expenses are concerned, this board approves all bills that I submit to the LDC, all of them, not just me. I don't go to the till and take the money. They all approve it. I bill this board $10 an hour for secretarial services. You got that so far?
Yes, sir.
$10 an hour, okay. Now, what I pay my secretary is no more this board's business than it is the town board's business, what Henry Van Acker is telling. Let me finish, sir. Let me finish. I've heard your sermon for 20 minutes. Let me finish. You can let me finish, can't you? Or you're afraid of the truth?
No, I
Okay, then let me finish. I've taken all I'm going to take from you because you seem to write fiction every time you talk. So you listen to this story and you make sure you got it right before you leave here, sir. Okay? Now, they approve these secretarial bills. Now, what my secretary got paid so far this year from the LDC was $8,440. Now, that's what I charge the LDC. What she gets paid is none of this board's business. Nobody here would like to discuss their salary in public, and I'm not going to discuss hers. But this board approves that salary, my friend, every time. And if you think you can get a secretary who types, does shorthand, answers the phone 8 hours a day, and also get an office with no charges, utilities with no charges, the use of all of my equipment for no charges, and get it for $8,440, I defy you to find that person or that office or that equipment. Because that's what this LDC has paid me for secretarial services. And if you think that's ripping off the taxpayer, sir, you are sadly mistaken.
think it's ripping off the LDC.
I think
But you're doing it with the LDC wide open, eyes wide open.
We're going to cut this off right now. All right, just a minute, Bob. If we have any more outbreaks like this from either side of the table, we'll call a halt to this meeting. And I think there's still some good questions out there that want to be answered. And I'm not going to tolerate outbreaks. Yes, Rob.
Dick, one thing I find strange, I'm looking around at all the LDC board members here, and I've been to the village board meeting, I've been to the town board meetings, I've been to 3 town board meetings just recently, and it's very strange that you have a corporation that's operating here, and for some reason the members, the LDC members yourself don't seem to take an interest you get. And the town, in other words, Mr. Beal and Mr. Blaine is here, there's nobody else here. Vice versa, when you go to the village, you have the 2 village people. You don't have anybody from the town or the other. It amazes me to understand. I can't understand how corporations go like that without knowing exactly firsthand what's happening. Instead of taking a third and fourth hand and taking it to the newspapers.
This matter of interest in organizations today, Bob, I can't answer that. You see it in every organization, I think. Lack of interest. Was there a question down front here, Mike?
No, I'm just saying that everybody's supposed to have a return.
I have a question, and it has to do with what Mr. Patton asked about Canadian companies and the LDC helping these Canadian companies to come in, use Canadian labor, buy Canadian products. This, Mr. Spiegel, transporter, came through LDC. You're not a Canadian.
I'm not a Canadian.
Did you hire Canadian labor? Did
No,
you
I
buy
did not.
Canadian goods? Did you pay minimum wage?
No, I do not, in any circumstance. And if that's what you want to address, I wrote a couple of things down, Dick, that I'd like to say. And I will say this. I happen to have a Canadian shareholder who happens to be a minority shareholder in my company. I have no shame in that. I don't think that's any problem. When you go to a bank, when you want to start a business, you go and you find some money. I went and I found some money. That's how I started this company 6 years ago. You brought up that people are coming down here because they're avoiding taxes. I don't think that you have a complete grasp of what this whole industrial revenue bond concept is. And I'm not going to go into it tonight. But you were going on with a lot of conjecture. You had a few points. I'm not going to say everything you said was wrong. But just to address the tax thing. The point is, Swanton, Vermont, St. Albans, Vermont, Burlington, Vermont, on that side of the lake alone, are all after that guy and probably 5 others out there that I don't see. So these tax incentives that they're giving them, and they're only incentives, they're short-lived, are strictly so that we're matching what they're doing. This is a national program. This isn't something that's just going on at Champlain and Rouse's Point, New York. You know, we didn't invent the wheel up here. Wages. People are working. They're getting paid. Mr. Krugnack happens to be paying $10, $12 an hour because he happens to probably have jobs that are a little higher skilled than others. There are others that are not paying that type of wage. But then again, I do it that way. You do it that way at the prison. Okay? Buying materials in Canada. I don't even want to address it. I don't know. We happen to build a Land Plus complex. And as far as I know, nothing came out of Canada. Don't strike me dead here if it did, because if it did, it came from an outfit in Plattsburgh that I won't advertise for tonight. Maybe they bought them up there. I don't know. We're giving money to build buildings. Now, nobody gave me any yet. I've been making payments every month, and I will for a couple more years to go. In fact, quite a few more. When you get an industrial revenue bond, to get that tax incentive in, you go to a bank. And you say, look, here's my financial statement. Here's how much I happen to be worth. Will you lend me the money? You might say no, just as well as they might say yes. It's no different than you're borrowing it from a bank. You're selling your bonds. The bank buys your bonds. Nobody on this board can approve what kind of money I get to build my building. And I think those are misconceptions that I just hate to see going out through the door here, because they're non-truths.
Rascal had 2 questions. I'll give you my second one. Within the last few years, there was an issue that involved just the village of Rouse's Point, and this was building a home for, I think they were called developmentally retarded people. And it got to be a very political and emotional issue in the village of Rouse's Point. You had people that didn't want it, you had people that said let them have it, they had people that were afraid, and it got to be pretty emotional. And at that time, the LDC did not take a stand, one way or the other, on this issue. But I happen to know that Mark went with Brian Moore to the village board in favor of it, and spoke out in favor of it. But nobody went to the LDC then and complained. Why? I mean, we have the same thing, but in a different... The LDC did not take position. This involved jobs, about 25 from what I get. And Mark spoke out that time very loudly, and nobody was there to chop his head off about it. And I'd like to know if these people were on the LDC at the time, did that come up at that time? I don't know if you were president at that time or if Marty was president.
I think Annie must have been, but I don't remember the exact time frame on that. But if I recall anywhere near correctly, the LDC was nowhere near as well organized as we are now. I think we were probably just starting as the LDC, because that must have been about 3 years ago.
We were looking for land for that. We were involved in that, I was looking for land for it.
Yeah,
Mr.
right.
Moore will tell you about that.
Right, we were involved because they wanted to go to Champlain, it was Village Ross Point. They didn't want it on the outside.
You didn't take a stand one way or the other at that time. The LDC did not make a public stand.
We was looking for land, anybody has land to sell for this thing.
But you did not make
Most
a
of the people
public
want to sell
stand
land.
supporting it or opposing it. That's what I'm asking.
I think you're looking at 25 compared to 400 jobs.
I'm looking at an issue of where does the LDC get
I think you're
involved
looking
and
at
where...
the impact on the area.
Well, the impact is not really...
Well, if I might state, I don't remember a formal request to support. I remember that there was something about locations of properties that would be available.
But my point is...
We had a request, I mean, to remember the lady came to the town first, but they had to have sewer and water. And that's why it wasn't built in the town.
No, but my point is, Mark went out and did something on his own. It had nothing to do with you. Nobody said it was being employed. That's my point. That's his job.
Is there anybody here that wants to ask a question that hasn't yet? I'm getting some duplication. Go ahead, Mark.
Brian Jefferson, Rouse's Point. I think the LDC is a great thing, and everybody here should be commended. Mark Berry's done good for Rouse's Point. He's done a lot of things. I'm proud of them. Not just Mark, everybody else here. You're doing a good job. But the bottom line is, you need to act in the best interest of the people. As far as I'm concerned, the prison issue, it's dead. I'm insulted. He stirred up controversy in the village. The news media is here. People are here. Everybody's in an uproar just because of one person. Why is that? The thing of it is when you're working for somebody, you got to act in their best interest. The bottom line is that most of the people here want the prison. So why do we keep going on? Why do you go and give press releases and give statements to the press? People in Plattsburgh, they're laughing at us. They think we're foolish, we're crazy. It's him. He's stirring up all this. If you can't act in the best interest, I got two suggestions. One, get in your car, go down to Plattsburgh, check out the unemployment. Or two, go down and see Victor Pod and go to work for him. Because you're not acting in my best interest. That's all I can say.
I'm sorry, I just would like to say that everybody seems to want to lay this at Mark's doorstep. Mark did not start the CAP committee single-handedly. If people would like to throw their minds back a little bit, I remember a few weeks ago when Ms. Holleran and I made an issue of it in the paper and asked the town people to come out to a board meeting so that we could bring up the situation and discuss it, because we felt personally that there were a lot of people that were against it and were afraid to speak, and dare I say why they would be afraid to speak if this is the kind of reaction they get for speaking against the prison. At that time was the first time I met Mr. Berry, who happened to be at this town board meeting, and I spoke to him for a couple of minutes after the town board meeting. And at that time, we decided that maybe we would like to get together to discuss this issue further, because he felt, as I did and as Ms. Holleran did, that there were other people who were against the prison issue and that perhaps we should have a voice in the matter. I'm just sorry that I'm tired of hearing people saying it was Mark who instigated this, it was Mark that started all this. Mark has a right to an opinion. He shared the same opinion as we did. He is not CAP. He does not head CAP. He speaks his mind, which any intelligent person does. I don't think that he should be denied the right to speak. And because he's an intelligent person and because he speaks well, he's the one that gets quoted, unfortunately, in the paper, and it is always the one that is pinpointed. The CAP committee will not fall apart because Mr. Berry is not on it, and it does not exist because Mr. Berry is on it.
I wanted to make a comment in response to what Mr. Patton was saying. I guess I sort of look like pretty much anybody else in this room, but I'm one of those dreaded Canadians that... joking aside, we've been in Champlain, I guess, around 20 years. Now we're in Rouse's Point. I'm a Canadian, by the way. I'm a permanent resident in the state, but I'm a Canadian. We have 25 people, and if I exclude myself, every last single one is an American, all right? We built our building with an American contractor. We buy our materials in the U.S., and believe it or not, Mr. Patton, we export to Canada, all right? So the generalization that you were making about, the companies coming down across the border, I think it sounds kind of nice, but it's pretty simplistic, and unfortunately, it's false. It's really not the case. Now, I'm not speaking for everybody. There may be companies like that, I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing that's for damn sure, and that's that we've been here a long time. We plan to be here a hell of a long time more, and we're going to continue employing Americans. We're going to continue buying American, and we're damn proud of being here. And what you were saying actually is very offensive to me as a Canadian working down here.
Just a minute, Bob, I have a question in the second row here.
Now, what I was going to ask is, the comment that Mark made, he went to the board about the hourly wage for the girl. He was told he wanted this. And he said he don't have to answer to the board. What is the he could just come and say, look, I need $5,000, I need $2, I need $10, and he don't have to answer to none of you fellas?
No. I don't think that was the point. He bills us $10 for his secretarial service. He puts that in front of a board that goes for approval. And it was the board's opinion that $10 was not unreasonable for secretarial services, including the time, the equipment.
No, but the point I'm getting at is he said, it's none of your business if he pays her $2 an hour or that $10 an hour. So if he pays her $2, I want to know where the other 8 is going, and don't you want to know? If he's calling you for $10 an hour and he's giving her 3, wouldn't you like to know where that other 7 went? That's what I'm talking about. That's the only part I'm talking about.
If I might clear up the matter here a little bit, when Mark bills us secretarial fees, he keeps a log, and if you would look at your billing that we get, you'll see that LDC General, the bill is there for the fees and the amounts for that month. Then if you look under the Reg 2, there's another figure. He breaks this down according to what it's coming out of. The Reg 2 grant will be reimbursed from the grants money. The Reg 3 will be reimbursed from the grants money. So that is money coming back. So I believe that at the current time, $10 an hour is a reasonable fee for a secretary. And if you're going to bill these fees, you've got to get chargebacks for them. Now, if you're billing at $2 an hour for a REDS grant, you're only going to get $2 an hour back off the REDS grant. But if you're billing 10, you're going to get 10. And you can't bill and if that's only what you pay.
I don't care what the hour pay. The point I was getting at is he said he went to you for this much money, and he said it's none of your business. And that's the part that I got. Just the part that he said it was none of your business what he does with that $10 an hour for that girl's wages. That's all I said.
Oh.
I don't care if he pays her 20 or, but we got the point where he said it's none of your business. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, I think the word phrase may be wrong, but I think
that's what I'm talking about.
Technically speaking, it is none of our business what he pays his secretary.
No.
But it is our business what he charges us for ours. That's being fair.
Dick, you've been buying me 6 times here.
Well,
I know, Bob. You've had 2 or 3 chances already. I laid the ground rules in the beginning.
Dick, can I just respond to Mr. Emery here?
Yes, go ahead.
Just to clarify that a little bit, Dick, I think what Mark was saying was that the part of her actual salary is nobody's business. In other words, the $5 or $6 an hour, whatever she gets paid. The thing is that all these other things are included in that $10. And the part that he doesn't want brought out is the fact that Unibog is making $6.50 an hour, and maybe somebody else, Henry Van Acker's secretary, is making $6 an hour, and so there's going to be a conflict there.
I was just putting the point on what he pays her and whether he has it for something else or not. But the point that struck me when he said it was none of your business what he does with that. And I figured it should be, seeing there's a board there. That's the only part. I ain't talking about how many things come out of that $10, but when he said it's none of your business, I was just wondering how it was run.
I think it was the thing was the rate that he pays her, that part of the $10. That it shouldn't be public notice.
Thank you.
I'd just like to make a statement here. Becky LeClaire. I got my job through Mark Berry, and it seems everyone here is that's against him is disagreeing because he happens to have he's taking an active part on a different opinion that he has. Well, I'd like to use Mr. Patnode as an example. Okay, my company is in fact renting a building from Mr. Spiegel. You disagree that it is a Canadian company, and you disagree that you do not like the Canadian companies over here. Does that mean that you are against Mr. Spiegel because he's actively supporting?
I didn't say that. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. I'd like to go back to October 27th. In the evening when the LDC board all voted in favor of a correctional facility. Now, on October 28th, the very next day, there is a memo from Mark L. Berry here, management consultant, and it's to all interested parties, and it's from Mark L. Berry and his son. And it says, "A prison in Champlain. I will be hosting an organizational meeting on Wednesday, October 28, 1987. For anyone who is interested in opposing a prison for Champlain, or if you would like to just see the question put to a public vote. The meeting will be in my office in the Power Tex 2 building. Look for the Power Tex sign on the Bridge Road in Ross's Point. Begin at 7:30 p.m. Please feel free to bring your friends and family. If you're unable to attend, please call, and he's got numbers there." Now, this young lady just said that Mark didn't host it or organize it, and I have a...
I didn't,
if you would
I
like-
said that we organized, at that time, when I spoke to Mr., I'm sorry, I shouldn't speak out of turn. Oh, wait.
I think we already covered that.
She said that he did not organize it, and here's a letter here that
I
says...
think Mike mentioned that earlier when he said that he hosts all kinds of meetings in his office.
And against work, any kind of work that would involve any kind of industry also. May I ask another part of the question? And may I poll the board? Let's assume that Mr. Berry decides that he doesn't like some other factory coming in here. Any type, it doesn't make a difference. And he, morally and ethically, he doesn't feel that it's proper. Would you, Mr. Natowski, yes or no, once again go along with Mr. Berry?
It depended on how I felt about that
Just a yes
particular
or no, that's
industry.
all.
It would depend on the industry, Bob. It's not a yes or no answer as far as I'm concerned.
How about you?
A hypothetical no.
Would you go on, Mr. Berry, if he proposed another industry sometime? Let's assume it's a good industry, decent industry in the prison.
Well, specify it then.
You gotta classify it.
It's the only kind I oppose, Bob.
No idea?
Well, there again, I think that it's the wrong question, but just a no answer. I would just simply say that if it was great, I don't think he would oppose it. But if it was bad, he might oppose it. But is that his job? I think that's the question. I think that's the answer to your question.
Exactly. Once again, you're more or less contradicting your statement, because most people feel the prison is great.
Well, I'm just, simply saying it.
$400
The person
is
that
not
is
bad.
supposed to decide what is good and what is bad.
Well, 400 jobs at $26,000 a year average. It's pretty decent. Mr. Grant?
It all depends on the manufacturer. If it's going to be an explosive plant or something, we would go along with them, no doubt. No question about that.
Mr. Neal?
I opposed a chlorine plant going into Ross's Point. Is that wrong?
No, I do too.
Okay. That's what I mean.
How many jobs? We don't pay Mr. Rasco for his opinion.
No, Bob, you're wrong on that.
That's why.
15 jobs in that quarry.
And if it was the prison, which I proposed, I'm for it. If it was for a good, clean industry, yes, I'm all for it.
Somebody else, thank you. Mr. Steve? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Morrow.
It would depend on the type of business.
I would like the same. Depends on the business.
Depends on the business. Naturally.
In other words, you more or less let him have the reins.
No. You didn't ask that.
I said decent business or industry. Naturally, I wouldn't be in favor of
I have a question down here in the front row.
My name is Stacy Berry. I'd like to address Mr. Lauren, statement Mr. Lauren just made. He said we don't pay Bob Rasco for his opinion. Am I to assume that you pay Mark Berry for his opinion?
We pay him for his services. And his services are contradicting everything that...
What is a consultant?
All right, we asked his opinion here, not in the newspaper where it has been. That is our problem.
But you asked for his opinion.
Exactly, but we did not ask for it on the front page of the paper. That he went without.
So there's a difference. It's all right for him to give his opinion as long as he's not outspoken about it?
Oh, no, we welcome his opinion, just like everybody here should be welcoming
Right,
ours.
as long as he's not outspoken about it.
No, we are paying him.
That's what you just told me.
You wanna listen to what the job definition is?
Runs in the family.
It's to promote, the town of Champlain as an economically and social attractive area in which to locate a business.
That's not what you just told me.
That's what we pay him consulting fees for.
You pay him consulting fees to consult you.
but not, he is contradicting what the feeling on the board was.
But he's
He can have-
consulting you, isn't he? He's
He's
giving you his consultation, what he
giving
feels,
his
his opinion?
consultation in the wrong place.
Oh, it's not the right opinion, is that it?
No.
Make up your mind.
Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. Under job definition here is where the problem is, not anybody's opinion.
Greg Favreau. Is there anywhere in that job description that it says that Mark Berry cannot give his opinion in the newspaper? I think the point Stacy was trying to make is, Mark is giving you his opinion, what he thinks the prison is going to do to the area. You're choosing not to listen to him, but yet, where does his right as an individual to speak start and his job end? Are they one and the same? You're taking away the man's individuality.
You don't sacrifice anything on your job. How many people at ARES would like to stand up and say, I don't like the Wyatt murder? Where in the heck would they be?
So you as an individual are going to take anything an employer tells you, regardless if you think it's morally right and if it's good for the job or not good for the job? Then you're not worth the money I'm paying you as a consultant if you're going to not want my input, regardless of how I feel of it as a person.
I think where it is said is the big thing.
But that's where you're cutting off his right as an individual and his position as a consultant.
No, you're reading it face value.
Ricky, can I ask you a question, if I may? Henry Van Acker, this is in the minutes, so I'm not exposing anything here. It's in the record of the town board. Henry Van Acker wrote a letter to Senator Stafford, sent a copy of it to the town supervisor, expressing his opposition to the prison. And Mr. Van Acker, in the same way that I am, is on retainer with the town board, only I'm on retainer with the Local Development Corporation, and he has openly and now publicly expressed his opposition to the prison. Would you favor Mr. Van Acker being fired from his job as town attorney for doing that? And if so, why not, or why?
Why? Why not? Because he did not hit the front page quite as many times.
Well, okay, I understand what you're saying. Okay, so, in other words, it's all right for Mr. Van Acker and Mark Berry to express his personal opinion as long as it doesn't hit the front page. How about if it hits the break page? Is that okay? How about if it just hits the letter to the editor column? Is that okay?
I think we're getting off.
I think we're getting close to the truth, Bob.
I have a question over here.
First, I want to make a statement. My husband works for one of these Canadian companies that were brought in by the LDC, and he gets his supplies and his services from the Champlain area, not from Canada. And secondly, I want to say most but not all people here are for the prison. Some of us are against the prison and need somebody to stand up for us because some of us just don't have the courage to do it. And thirdly, I have a question. If Mr. Barry approved of the prison and made the paper every day, would there be a problem? And would we be here today?
No.
You have a short one there?
Yeah. Thanks, Commissioner. First of all, I couldn't leave this hall tonight without saying, the gentleman over here, I married a Canadian. So. I really have nothing against Canadians. However, one at a time, when I came to town, Anakimia was here. I think that's the proper name, right? Okay. They were already here. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Fort Montgomery, Victor Pot Estates, Ross's Point, Industrial Development, anything you want to call it. Okay? I'm talking about appearances. That's what's wrong. That's what I find wrong. In 1983, at the birth of the LDC, people made some predictions of the future in the terms of money. Up to this day, 1987, we have not yet any revenue to the town of Champlain for all of the efforts of the LDC. When I was saying contractual services,
Mr. Berry's going to answer that.
Contractual services. I was talking about the buildings built by Mr. Pod. And in all appearances, irregardless of what anybody says, on the surface, Mark Berry is a full-time employee of Victor Pod. That's the way, I'm saying that that's the way it appears. The LDC office should not be on Fort Montgomery Estates.
It's not the LDC office, Mr. Paddock, it's my office, and the LDC pays me no money for providing it to them, number one. And by the way, I want to apologize to you for losing my temper. When I came here today, I prayed and vowed that I wouldn't lose my temper. But honest to God, Richard, you are so far from the facts that I don't even know where to begin with you. Now let me explain a couple of things and see if we can't take a couple of minutes, give you a crash course in Fort Montgomery Estates. First of all, Mr. Pod sold to the local development corporation the lots that are being developed out there. I'm speaking specifically of the lot upon which National Commercial Exchange is located beyond the Anakemia building. We have never sold any land for Mr. Pod. We have bought land from him. We bought 4 lots from him at $3,000 per acre. If you think that's high, I can show you where we've got an option to purchase some land from a farmer in Champlain behind Harris Graphics, and he's asking us let me finish, please, Richard. He's asking $6,000.
That's all I want you to do.
I'm going to finish it. He's asking us 6,000 acres. So I think the first point is that when Mr. Pod sold us the land, A, he didn't make a fortune. 3,000 acres, peanuts for industrial land. Number 2, Mr. Pod very generously agreed that we wouldn't even have to pay him for the land until... Am I boring you, Richard?
Oh, go ahead. I can hear you very
Mr.
well.
Mr. Pod agreed that we wouldn't even have to pay him for the land until we ourselves sold the land. Okay? And so after we got title to the land without giving him a nickel, we went to the state of New York and we started asking for grants. Grants that didn't go to Victor Pod, but went to the LDC, the Local Development Corporation. And with those grants, we bought a road and sewer and water lines with the help of Rouse's Point. We had electrical lines installed. We paid for the materials. They did the labor. And so we had a road going by this land. And then the land was a lot more valuable when it's got a road in front of it, sewer and water and electric. And then we sold that land to companies, okay, like National Commercial Exchange and New York Gear Company. And we made a good profit on it. The last lot that we sold for over $9,000 an acre. So we made $6,000 an acre profit. And we took that money and we put it right back into the road to run the road another 1,000 feet. Mr. Pod has made $3,000 an acre off the land, okay? And I never begrudged of it because last year he spent more than $42,000 advertising that industrial park and gave us many of the leads and helped us bring in some of these businesses. And despite what many of you may think, Mr. Pod has not made money off the LDC. Mr. Pod has not made money off the sale of the land. And most of what you say simply isn't true. Now, you talk about taxes. Let me explain something to you on taxes, too. Every company that comes in here has to pay taxes. But because they use a revenue bond, okay, that property is in the name of the IDA. It's a legal thing. It's a lease. We're a pass-through agency. If they go down the tubes, we don't get stuck holding the bag. Mr. Spiegel goes down the tubes, the bank will end up owning his building. The IDA has nothing to do with it. But in the meantime, we ask them to make payments in lieu of taxes. Now, we give them a break. In in Champlain right now, we generally tell these companies, for the first 3 years, you don't have to pay anything in taxes. That's how we get them in. We give them a lollipop to come in. Now, you say, well, that's ridiculous. I can show you towns across the country where they don't make them pay taxes for 15 years. I can show you a magazine called Industrial Sites and Parks where they actually give them buildings. There are 24,000 industrial parks in this nation right now, and we compete against every single one of them. So yes, we give them tax breaks, but you know, before we even gave those tax breaks, I went to the school board on behalf of the LDC. I went to the town board. I went to the Rouse's Point Village Board. I went to the Champlain Village Board, and I said, this is what we're thinking of doing. What do you think about these tax breaks? And Leo Letourneau said it best. He said, a half a loaf is better than no loaf at all. And every one of those companies coming in, if they weren't here, they wouldn't be paying a nickel. Not a nickel. In fact, after they've been here for a while, after they pass their 3-year period, they will start paying. Not too long ago, I sent a memo to all of the elected officials about these pilot payments, payment in lieu of tax agreements. And it indicated that these 7 companies we have bought in, working with right now, will pay more than and $51,000 in property taxes by the year 2000. Now that's not peanuts, Richard. That's good for something, and I think you can go to every single one of those companies, whether it be Anakemia, Transporter, Paratex, Northware, Irving Bernstein's National Commercial Company, the Gear Company, and they will tell you right here on the public record that if it wasn't for those tax breaks, they probably wouldn't be here right now. And it didn't cost the taxpayers a nickel, because that money, you wouldn't have any of it now. At least you're going to have $1 million by the year 2000 that you didn't have before. And I'm not ashamed of that. And these companies that have come in, they're not ashamed of taking it either, because it helps them. After 3 years, when they've gone past that first critical period, they start paying. And even in the case that you like to cite, where Mr. Pod sold his first building, he sold it to the Northware Company. Now, a lot of people figure, well, Pod didn't pay taxes for 3 years, then he sold his building. That was good news for us, because he moved into a building that was 1/3 as large, and behind him he left a tenant who bought that building. Now, the guy that bought the building, Northware Fashions, he doesn't get a free ride. That agreement stays in place. He started paying taxes as of the first of this coming year. That's what the pilot payment agreement said. And it's not going to change, and we didn't lose a nickel of revenue. In fact, we made more money. You know why? Because Mr. Pod sold the building for about $1 million, and it cost him less than that to build it. The assessment wasn't even $1 million. And our pilot agreements are set up so that if the assessment goes up, or if our tax rate goes up, we get more money. They have to pay more. So they don't get any breaks in the sense that when your taxes go up, so do theirs. And the breaks that we have given them were designed simply to bring them in. And while I'm at the subject, I think we ought to talk about the Harris Building. I know what meeting you're talking about. You're talking about a meeting that Mr. Soucy requested with the town clerk and myself to discuss the assessment of the building. I made no proposals at that meeting other than to explain to those two gentlemen that if they were interested in a compromise, that this was the only legal way that I knew of how to do it. It is not my decision, or even the LDC's decision, or the IDA's decision as to what, if anything, is going to be done on the assessment of that building. That'll be handled by the assessor, and I suspect, frankly, the courts. Okay? It is the policy of the IDA, in writing, not to give tax breaks on any building that's already here. That is our policy, and it was approved by all of the elected officials when we went to each of those boards. So again, you were not correct when you're saying that somebody's getting a free ride or Mark Berry's going to give away the boat on the Harris Building. That's our policy. And we've had to do it before, and we've lost business because of it, because some people have looked at existing business. Richard, look, I don't know you, I've never met you. But all I'm asking you is that before this battle is over, at least make an effort to get the facts. We asked you to come into our office to look at these records, to look at the books, and you didn't show up. You said publicly you need a CPA or a corporate attorney to figure out our books. How could you say that? You've never even seen our books. You know who does our books? Our son Letourneau, the village treasurer. He's not even a CPA. And I've got the books here. I want you to look at them before you leave. If you can't figure those books out, I'll read them for you. They're so easy, it's pathetic. Because I don't understand books. I'm not a bookkeeper. All you had to do was walk in and ask. Instead, you have caused a lot of damage, my friend. A lot of damage. By your statements. Can I finish?
Can't go on for about 2 hours.
All I want is as much time as you had, Dick. One more statement. I have already gotten calls from companies who we're negotiating with who have seen the publicity. Okay? Particularly your statement that there were some shady land deals going on, that there is the appearance of evil surrounding the LDC, and that I was accepting kickbacks in the form of parcels of land. And you know what, Mr. Patno? Now they're not so sure they want to deal with me. And everything you said was false.
I would agree.
Dick, I'd like to just bring out a point here. Without the correctional facility here in the town of Champlain, in most cases, like in Dannemora, they took care of about 72% of the storage system right in the village, okay, of Dannemora. Now, also, in 1990, I believe it is, the village of Champlain is going to have to put in a new sewer system. That's mandated.
I think this is
quite a bit off the subject. No, I just want to bring out a point. No, I just want to bring out a point. And I'm just wondering if a lot of people here don't realize how much their sewage rates are going to go up. They're probably going to go up by anywhere from 4 to 5 times. And without that correctional facility, they're going to be hurting. Just want to make a point.
Bob, if I can just very quickly, Dick, I know I don't want to take time, I just want to read this to you. It says, if the village of Champlain is building a new sewage treatment plant for their own purposes, such as increased village demand or anticipated development, the Department of Corrections will not contribute. However, if a new sewage treatment plant is being built to accommodate the department, then the state would pay its fair share. The department has paid its fair share to upgrade sewage treatment plants in the past. Now, I suppose you can interpret that any way you want, but my interpretation of that statement is that if the village is going to build one anyway because of increased need and capacity, then it's not likely that the Department of Corrections will pay for it. I think you want to get a copy of this. This was signed by Thomas Cochran, the Commissioner of Corrections.
But once again, you did say, though, and how you interpret it, if the prison does use the village sewer, then they're going to help pay for it. So you thought about that both ways.
Mr. Chairman, we're here to discuss the prison or the LDC. Can we get on with
Well, let's discuss the LDC if you have a question.
Well, I was just wanting to see what the agenda was, because it seems like we're spending half the time discussing the prison issue.
Are there any more questions having to do with the LDC?
I'm Bonnie Hicks. I'm a former employee of Harris. Thanks to Mark Berry, I've been able to stay in the area. I'm currently managing one of the Canadian businesses that he helped bring into the area. My question is the public really aware of what Mark and the LDC has done as far as bringing businesses in? Has there ever been a public statement?
Yes, there have been public statements, there have been reports written to the elected officials, there have been reports in the paper, carried in the paper.
To the new businesses that are being brought in?
Yes, yes.
Because I've never seen my business in the paper.
Well, maybe we haven't had one. How old is yours?
Well, wait a minute, excuse me, Bonnie, we haven't announced yours because of the construction plans. You were here, but because there is pending construction, I think that Stuart and the boys have decided not to announce it yet until the financing is in place.
I was just curious.
And I think we cover this type of thing at another meeting, in fact, I think the town board meeting, that many times, because the owners of the company, managers of the company, don't want it announced yet until everything is signed, sealed, and delivered. So we keep it quiet up to that point. Well, that would answer your question.
Excuse me, Bonnie, just a quick question. You don't have to tell me what you're getting with. Are you getting minimum wage?
Absolutely not.
Are you getting benefits?
Not yet. We're working on putting it together right now. But if anyone's interested, I'm making maybe 40% more than what I was at Harris. So Mark has come by with me with a good position. Yeah, by the way, my staff is over here. I also employ 9 people from Champlain Rouse's Point. More than minimum wage, good.
Good.
I think,
Back here, Dick.
I don't care.
Francis Roberts.
Yes, sir.
Mark spoke about payment in lieu of taxes. I was informed here about 2 weeks ago that our local school district, our local municipality has not received any payment in lieu of taxes. Am I right, sir?
That's right. They start next year.
Thank you.
They start the first of the year.
You answered my question.
Well, we got a 3-year thing.
Yes, back row.
My name is Leo Bushy. They say a little while ago, Mr. Berry says he gives a tax break. When I put a building next to the whole highway there, I didn't have a tax break. I bought $18,000 materials. I figured my time at $15 an hour. I had to build $32,000 and they put $157,000 evaluation on it. That's my break I had. And I came to the board, they didn't do nothing about it. And I've been bitch about it last 2 years. And now I got 2 bills on the same piece of property now. I have to get 2 bills now. It was not enough. Now they bill me twice on the school tax and the town tax. You think it's fair?
Mr. Bush, I agree with you. I think that, just so that everybody knows, in order to get the tax breaks that we're talking about, you must have issued a revenue bond, an industrial revenue bond. And unfortunately, revenue bonds to have issued are very, very expensive. For example, the lowest possible revenue bond that would make it worth your while would be $500,000. And unfortunately, your project was under $500,000. However, the town still has an option. If the town wanted to, and unfortunately they have not done this, they could use a section of the real property tax law called 485B, and they could give small projects like yours a tax break. But they have chosen not to do that. The only thing that the LDC can do is use revenue bonds and give you the tax break that way. Unfortunately, a revenue bond for a project of your size would have cost you more than the tax break would have saved you. Okay? You and I didn't talk at the time you started your building. We talked after you'd started it. But Mr. Bush, I agree with you. I don't think it's fair that a small, because you've got a business in there now, don't you?
But what I can understand, what I got two tax now.
Well, they didn't want to miss you.
Look, I can with men or not. Now they, well, I have to pay for part or what? Because the part is free and they have to get the double tax on me or what? That's the answer I want.
I just wanted to state that my husband is not making minimum wage as the job he has. He's making a little bit more. And yes, he has worked for minimum wage, and if necessary, you can make ends meet. We have 2 children, and we have managed. We don't have all the luxuries we would like, but we can manage.
Anybody else?
Dick, how does the board propose, how does this board propose to resolve the controversy at hand? And what are you going to do in the future to continue the fine and excellent work that the LDC has done?
How do we propose to continue?
How do you propose to resolve the present controversy? And what do you plan to do? What are you going to do in the future to continue the excellent work that the LDC has done?
Well, all I can say right now is, again, that our plans have not been completely formulated. I really can't give you a definitive answer right now. We are working on it.
Well, I think I'd like to know what your plans are, because if I'm going to get fired, I think that I'd like to know about it tonight. Unless this board has decided that it's not a distinct possibility, we're simply going to let this thing die as it probably should. Maybe I'm misreading Ken's question, but I'd like to know about my future.
Well, I guess Mike, when we're ready, will tell you. I don't know how else to answer it.
Will I be told tonight? Well, Dick, come on, we're in public. You had a meeting before the meeting, executive session. I was asked not to come. Was there a decision made, and if so, what was it?
We didn't have an executive session, Mike.
Well, this public meeting was advertised at 7:30, and all of you...
I understood that you didn't care whether you came or not, so I suggested you not come.
You suggested it would be better if I didn't come. And I agreed with you, man.
I'm sorry, I forgot the word better.
Mr. Collins?
Ms. Halloran?
My answer to the second part of my question is, what does the LDC propose to do in the future to continue its good and excellent work?
Well, I thought I answered that question. Well, we're formulating plans at the moment.
Can you expand on those?
No. No further comment. Ms. Halloran?
I'd just like to address the board in terms of the Committee Against the Prison. As individuals, we would have been foolish not to tap into Mark's talents as a speaker. The organization would not have maybe made the paper as many times, but the fact is you have to use talent, and you people have to continue to use the talent that he offers to you. He has done things well for you. He's put you on the map as a viable organization, a credible organization, one of respect. If you pander to the attacks of a few people who are going to make this the be-all, end-all of Champlain, you are killing the village in a much more subtle manner than you could ever imagine. The fact is, there are thinking individuals out there who don't maybe have the opportunity to come forward and say, I disagree. Maybe they don't have the ability. They're frightened. We have done our best to try and get them out. It didn't work, maybe, because you still feel that it's 1,000 to 45 for a no vote. Excuse me? The fact remains, you can go on. You are a good organization. You've proven yourselves. If you stop now, you may find somebody that's as good, maybe you'll find somebody as better. But the time for LDC to continue is now. I can't imagine last year without the effort that you people backed him up on for the Harris workers. How quickly we forget. Where'd that $10,000 come from to help the Harris workers? It wasn't because I jumped out there and organized it. It wasn't because this person jumped out there and organized it. It was because Mark got on the phone and got it going. I mean, let's use the talent we have. We're not always going to disagree, but when we disagree, let's do it in a manner that's a little bit above board instead of attacking a man's job. Mr. Jefferson alluded to the fact that people are laughing at us. They sure are laughing at us because we're so intolerant of each other and so close-minded that we can't get along. That's all I had to say.
Dick, I've lived here most of my life. I've seen this village go to hell day by day. You can go down the street there at night, 7 o'clock, and shoot a shotgun through Main Street, you're not going to hit nobody. And we used to have a nice little village here. Now, I'm not going to state if I'm for it or against it, but these people that are against it, can they bring us in an industry that's going to compete with this prison and bring us some money? Now, I've been up through Altona. I've been through Denimora twice. In fact, when I was up in Altona the other day, I think some of you guys were with me, and I even asked them, if you got any volunteer work up here you want me to come up and do, I'll do it. Their infirmary up there is cleaner than a CV hospital. And I asked a guy at a board meeting here the other night, is it like that all the time? Or they just clean it up because we were going there? He says, no. He says, I go in there 3-4 times a week, and that place is clean. And the outside is beautiful. Now, I don't know why they don't want something in here. We've got to have something to get started on. We got a ghost town here. Now, I've lived here all my life. A lot of you people are just coming in here, maybe. Some of you have lived here 4 or 5 years. You don't know what we've had to go through in the last 40, 50 years. I'm fortunate. My 2 children got jobs and they stayed here. But a lot of people has lost their children. They're gone out of here.
That's not such a terrible thing.
It is if you love your family.
That's right, lady. To answer your question about whether or not we can bring in an industry that will do as much as the prison at one time.
Yes, Dick.
We don't know. That's looking into the future.
Well, there's not much coming in here.
Well, I think we've done a pretty damn good job of bringing industry in here. Matt, can I shut up? Jeez, I mean, can you shut up for a minute?
Thank you. Go ahead, Dick. I want to listen to the rest of what you have to say.
We might hit one tomorrow.
Right.
That would bring in 200 jobs.
I hope you do.
We've got one that's right on the front burner now. That in a couple of years will probably add up to 75 jobs. And those are good paying jobs, high paying jobs. But these places, you go look for them, and they also come to you sometimes.
Right.
And they don't come under every bush. So, to answer your question, whether or not we can do it, maybe we can and maybe we can't. We may bring in half a dozen smaller ones, which, to my way of thinking, is better than one big one, anyway. And maybe they will start out paying minimum wage. But after a couple of years, they're going to pick up, they're going to pay more money. So this is something that there's no real definite answer to.
No, I don't want to put the pressure on you people. But I'm saying these people that doesn't want the prison in here, can they go out and get us something that'll even bring us half of what the prison's going to bring us in? That's what I'm asking.
No, yeah.
Albert, I just wanted to remind you about New York Gear Company, which we made an announcement on. We were forced to announce it because of some legal problems. We probably still wouldn't have announced it if those problems hadn't occurred, but I think it's still fairly safe to say that they will be coming in. We are making arrangements to clear their lot, hopefully before the ground freezes or as it freezes. They will begin construction in spring if all goes well. They will begin by hiring 26 people. These are machinist jobs, and they're $8 and $10 an hour, and they're come with benefits. These are jobs for Harris people. Now, I admit, it took a year from the time that Harris announced that they were closing for us to come up with a New York Gear. That company is going to grow very, very quickly. It will be the only minority business enterprise gear house in the United States. And even as we negotiate now to put the final package together, they are getting contracts which would indicate that their projections for 75 jobs within 3 years are going to be extremely modest. In fact, I would dare say they're going to hit 75 jobs before the end of 2 years. Those are good jobs. And what I'm telling you is that at least we're trying. The LDC has been trying. Now, that's not the end, okay? That's not even the beginning, probably not even close. But we are trying, and those are real jobs. And it's wrong for somebody to take a great big paintbrush and say everything that the LDC does is minimum wage and no benefits. You've heard from people that are in the business right now that's not true. New York Gear is probably the single best industry that we'll bring in the sense that not only does it pay large-scale wages and benefits, but it's for people who are laid off like Harris Graphics. And I don't want to get into the prison issue, okay? But I've had those machinists come into my office. Okay, I've listened to John LaBounty, but I've had his people come in and give me the resumes and tell me that they can't become a correction officer. They're not interested. Or they can't become a clerk steno or whatever it is for a prison. Or they don't have a trade like Bob does to be able to teach. They're machinists, pure and simple. Some of them have been machinists for 10, 15, 20 years. And those are the jobs that those people are going to get. And we ought to get some credit for that. It's been missing for the last 4, 8 weeks. You'd think New York Gear was a ghost. Nobody had ever heard of it when you come to these meetings. It's a real company with real jobs for people at Harris who need those kinds of jobs.
What type of
And it's going to be here a lot quicker than a prison will be.
What type of machinist jobs are you talking about down there?
They need lathe operators, they need deburrers, they need grinders, they need gear cutters, they need, I have the list, and many of the people who work at Harris have come and looked at it. And I have asked them if they thought they were qualified. Most of them said they were. Some said they weren't sure. But in any case, we have already talked to the state of New York, and we will be able to provide funds to New York Gear to retrain those machinists so that they can work in there. I know that one machinist can't necessarily go from and work on 6 different machines, but I know that I know those people though, Albert, and I have a lot of credit and faith in them. And I think that if we gave them a break and we said, look, we'll train you how to cut gears rather than cut something else, that they would learn. And the company's willing to give them that chance. That's why that company's here, because of those machinists. And I'm saying if that company thinks those machinists are good enough to locate here, then you ought to think the same thing.
I ain't saying nothing against the company. But I say you only got 2 gear cutter operators that you can get out of Harris.
Well, I got 2 resumes for gear cutters.
No, I'm talking about Harris. You've got 2 gear cutters. If you get anybody else out of there, they're not gear cutters. I know, I've been there for 43 years.
When did the board make a decision that it would possibly terminate Mark's job? Was it at the request of a petition, or did they do this on their own?
I would have to say that it was done on their own.
It seemed to be the timing was at the presentation of the petition to the board. Isn't that correct?
I don't think we've seen any petition.
All right. I think my second point is there's a bit of irony here that we all ought to think about. I came in late, so I don't know what was said before. But you all on the board have shown strong support for a prison. Mark obviously is of different opinion. Now, if you see fit to fire him, you will do more to harm a prison coming into this community than we ever could think of doing. And you better think twice and keep him on board, because he's a talented individual.
Just one thing. I want to just have the record straight, okay? This young lady mentioned a minute ago about the monies that were gotten at the school, okay? Well, the school, actually, it was the school principal and a lot of the secretaries and whatnot that did put on this little thing to get the money, and then Mark, am I correct, Mark? And then the money was turned over to you. You didn't organize it or anything. The money was turned over by my wife to you.
Maureen used the figure of $10,000.
I don't know what the money amount was.
The total amount raised was a little over $21,000. And the school fundraiser, and I say to this public, if you would, Bud Moore and your wife, I think were primarily responsible, raised a little over $10,000. The rest of the money was raised through a lot of different people. I certainly don't take credit for raising the $20-some-odd thousand. I give that credit to the hundreds of people who worked on it. But I think that Maureen was right when she said that the LDC took a leadership role during the Harris crisis. We were out there early, within hours of the time the announcement was made, and we continue to work hard, very hard for Harris workers. Very, very hard.
I'm not disputing that. I just want, the record to be, you did help, and I'm not saying you didn't help with the money.
I helped probably the least of everybody, but I'm proud of what I did.
One more.
Thank you. First of all, let me give a disclaimer here. Normally, I keep my mouth shut since I work for a newspaper, but I live here too. Just like Mark can comment on the prison, I feel entitled to comment. I do not underestimate the wisdom of the LDC board combined. I do think that people are trying to say things here that are not coming through clearly. The prison issue, the Canadian job issue, everything else is clouding it. I'm wondering if all the board members watched the show on Channel 57 a couple weeks ago. Did anybody miss it? I would suggest, if anybody did miss it, to watch it, because I think within this show is this whole issue in a nutshell. I don't think it's that Mark is against the prison. I think it is the way Mark has handled the affair. I think it has to do with the fact that on this show, Mark said that people were forced to sign this petition with 1,000 names, that names were on that didn't belong. He jumped on Dick for not ever going to look at the books of the LDC. Mark, did you ever look at the petition?
Yes, I have it here with me.
When did you look at it, Mark?
After the show.
Okay. That's one example.
Well, if I can explain to you, this was brought up in executive session or I think an open session at the LDC meeting with Mr. Beal. The statement that I made on the show, that it was our opinion that the petitions were not a valid...
You didn't say it was your opinion, you said this is, and that's the problem. You were giving lots of things as fact that didn't come out as fact, and anybody, whether you're for the prison, whether you're against the prison, the facts were twisted or they were not complete. And there was no one there to disclaim this. And it scares me. It really scares me, because if the way you handled this show is the way you handle LDC business, by what means are we bringing industry into this area? Anybody watching this show, it is so obvious, it frightens me. So I'm sure the board can see this. I'm sure a lot of people want to say this, but just didn't have the right words. I think, yes, Mark did a great job with it, and I do think you deserve most of the credit for this thing last year, the fundraiser. You got it off the ground, and everybody jumped on and helped tremendously. There are a lot of jobs here that weren't here before, and yes, $5, $3 an hour jobs are better than nothing. And, I mean, give credit where credit is due. But when you go on television and don't give the facts, when you go to the newspapers instead of saying to the LDC, this is really a scary thing we want to bring into the town, and let's discuss this, because this was June that this was first discussed. It didn't need to wait until a couple weeks ago for objections. I mean, I know the board is looking at this, and I'm really glad they are, and that's all I have to say.
If there are no more questions from the public,
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, we have one back here.
Rodney Harvey from Champlain. I'd just like to make a statement here. This New York Beer Company should come bring them in. Hey, fantastic. If they bring in 200 jobs in 5 years, fantastic. But the point's been made more than once tonight. It's been made across the past, is that this prison is not going to benefit the whole Harris workers. We have a lot of people in this area that's unemployed. Yes, the cracks numbers are going to transfer in from other facilities. It's going to have openings in those facilities. People are going to get hired to go downstate. But we can't only think of, and it's tragic with Harris, but we have to think of everybody in this township too. Everybody's working everywhere. We're unemployed everywhere.
Thank you. The question I have in mind is this thing regarding a vote. How much longer is this going to take? How many more of these meetings are there going to be before there is a vote? This is during a community park. Let's face it.
Well, it certainly is, Clyde, but in something like this, we have to be very careful. We have to take our time and make sure that what we're doing is proper and right, in the best interest of everyone. So it is going to take a little time. But we're working on it, and hopefully that when it's all over, people will be satisfied with what we've done.
Right, that way there we get everybody a chance. You vote yes, you vote no, and it's over.
Are you talking about prison votes?
Yes, sir.
I thought you were talking about...
That's what everybody's here for.
What here? No.
Good majority are.
This was here to discuss the LDC.
I understand it's not just prison, but you take a poll, a lot of them here are interested in the prison.
I don't know what to say about a prison. I don't know what to say about a prison vote because that's how I am.
Do you know when that could possibly happen?
I can't answer that.
Not gonna happen. It's a fair way to do it.
State of New York.
Can I comment on that? The Chamber of Commerce was approached
by
the pro or the con people against the prison to do a referendum. The directors, I'm no longer a director, but they discussed it and they said that they would not do a referendum unless they had consensus from both sides. We approached the people that are pro-prison or some of the representatives, and they said they didn't have anything to do with the referendum. So the chamber dropped it at that. And that was within the last 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Manish?
Yes. I would like to say this, regardless of one way or the other, I'd like to see LDC stay on. I think it's a definite good thing. I would like to see a job description made out in time to come. I know it takes time, but I think it's a good guideline. The second thing I would like to see is I would like to have the LDC send to the people that are putting in the tax money once a year, once 6 months, once 3 months, a sheet of paper and telling us what you have done.
Very good suggestion. Again, yes.
I just have one question. Can anybody tell me the actual number of the 400 jobs that will be filled by people unemployed in the Champlain area, or will be filled by outside people?
Who knows?
Many as they want. All you can do is take the test. I got as good a chance as this
Statewide
guy
test,
over here.
isn't it?
Right. I got just as
So
good a
that
chance
means
as him or
anybody
him
from
or
New York
him.
State,
Right.
not just people from
Right.
Champlain.
That's not for this meeting to try and determine.
No, I'm just asking how many jobs actually will go to Champlain, because it's being claimed there will be 400 jobs for people from Champlain.
Well, that's a subject for another meeting somewhere. Yes.
Gerald Mayo, I just want to ask a question. Has the correctional department approached the members of the LDC or the town board and said definitely they're going to build a prison in Champlain?
You have to ask Mr. Beal and Mr. Lane, I would know that.
They didn't? Well, it would be safe to say that with all this controversy that's been going on, we have shot ourselves in the foot. Because I doubt very much if the state of New York will come into an area that has such controversy as such as being displayed tonight. That's all I have to say.
What you said is true.
I mean, answer it. And you want me to answer?
Well, he had a question.
Oh. But he answered his question.
You answered this question?
He did.
Oh, he did. Anything else? If not, we'll go back to regular order of business. Yeah, we've got one man on there.
Yeah, I'd like to address the board, Joe Turner, Champlain. I think this whole thing arose because you fellas didn't have any controls over your employee, our employee. And I think something else like this in the future could be prevented if you set down bylaws for your employee. I mean, he has to answer directly to you or to the town board where you're getting your funding. Not just Mark, but anybody that has his job. In the future, if there's somebody else, if they do something like Mark has done and go ahead and use all their powers, it's a breach of contract that was mentioned before, and he has to be answerable to somebody for that. I mean, there must be some sort of admonishment or something you can do without costing him his job. I mean, the LDC did a good job. They're doing a good job. Mark's done a good job. He got on the wrong foot as far as I'm concerned in this issue. He went public with it where he should have sat in the background. I know that's not his way. Mark goes full steam ahead on everything he gets involved with, and that's, you know, for you fellas up until this point, it's been good. This meeting has gone so many different directions, you can't follow it. I mean, it's prison and this and Canadian jobs, that's not what we're here for. And Dick, you could end this whole thing by just saying, look, we know that Mark was at fault here, we're going to do something about it. I'm not talking about firing him or anything like that. You have to have something for the future where this isn't going to happen again. That's what the whole thing is about.
Well, Joe, we are going to do something, but I can't tell you tonight what we're going to do. We don't know yet. So how can I tell you?
I think you would have saved a lot of this talk if you would have said an hour ago, we're going to do something about this. Just made that statement.
That's true, Joe, but these people had something they wanted to get off their mind.
Yeah, but I mean, prisons and tearing down Canadian businesses are all good for the community. I mean, a job is a job whether it pays $3 or $19 an hour, and that wasn't the question here tonight. I mean, if you fellows decide to keep Mark on, there are other ways. I mean, you know yourself that people can go to the town board and end your funding. And without funding right now, I understand you wouldn't be operating. Well, I don't want to see that. And most of the fellows that are involved in this don't want to see that. But I know also most of them are going to do just that. So, make a statement tonight that there will be some... Mark wants to know where he stands. I know you're not going to turn around and say you're fired in front of everybody, or look, you've got to figure out something and let us know as soon as possible what's going to be done about this situation.